Welcome, everyone. I am Dave Champion, and this is my co-host, Bill Carns, and together we are totally unprepared. And we pretty much are, as usual, totally unprepared. What do you want to talk about in the opening segment?
I'll tell you what I want to talk about. I want to talk about yet another case of murder by cop for nothing. Murder by cop for nothing with a cover-up involved, other people involved, and all of this felonious. They should all be drawn and quartered if found guilty.
Tell me more.
Sandra Bland. Young woman, 28 years old, out of Chicago area, down in Texas, down in the Houston area, Walker County, gets pulled over by a highway patrolman for failure to use her turn signal to change lanes when she's trying to get out of the way of the trooper who's on her bumper. He's following too close. She gets out of the way so he can go by. No, he pulls her over.
And this is sort of one of the irony that opens this whole thing. Okay, I think this is filled with ironies from beginning to end. But the opening irony of this is he's riding her bumper. She gets over as a courtesy to let him go by, and fails to use her blinker while providing this courtesy. And he pulls her over.
Yeah. Pulls her over, cites her. She's sitting in her car having a cigarette, obviously a little distraught over this whole garbage. He starts engaging her in conversation about her being upset. Yes, I'm upset. He asks her to put out the cigarette. She says, I don't need to put out the cigarette in my own car.
Let's not miss the critical part here. Before saying she seems upset, he hands her the citation book
to sign, yes.
To sign.
Yes.
She does not object to sign. She does not refuse to sign. She doesn't do anything like that. He hands it to her, and after it's in her possession, he says, you seem a little upset.
Yeah. She doesn't want to put out the cigarette, and so then he tells her, get out of the car, I'm giving you a lawful order. And then she refuses. The whole thing is on. Pulls out his taser, tells her he's going to light her, yells at her, I'm going to light you up. She gets out of the car, takes her off camera, tackles her to the ground. Now, there's independent cell phone footage of what happens after the dash cam video. It's out of frame.
Right.
Independent. And there's a sheriff's deputy that comes up, and he's, keeping the cool while he's watching this other cop violate this woman's rights, beating her ass, and hooking her up because of failure to use the turn signal. Claims that she's resisting. Nothing in the audio shows that. Nothing in the independent cell phone video shows that. And then, of course, the guy that's doing the independent cell phone video, he's got to be 50 feet away. The sheriff deputy tells him, you got to get out of here.
Yeah.
You got to cover the evidence. You got to not have evidence of this.
This thing is dirty from beginning to end. And, of course, I want to walk through the whole thing again for the audience. But the final chapter in this, she's dead.
Yeah.
She goes to jail and never comes out, and the Walker County Jail claims she killed herself.
Yeah, now, she's dead 3 days later. Now, tell me, someone gets stopped for failure to use a turn signal, ends up going to jail, and she's not out? She's not just a walk-through process 3 days later? I mean, did they not scoop up the body for an extra couple of days? How was she in jail for that long?
Right. How about it's a blinker? You're released on your own recognizance, right?
Yeah.
But of course, they probably booked her for resisting arrest. Which,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, here's the absurd part about this, and here's what makes this so grotesque, the fact that this woman is dead based on the conduct of this officer. He hands her the ticket book. As I said, she in no way refuses to sign the ticket. He says, you seem upset. She says, yes, I'm upset. You're citing me for not using my blinker. I was trying to get out of your way, and now you're citing me, right? Very understandable reaction. Even if the deputy doesn't, or the state trooper doesn't particularly like hearing it, it's a very understandable human response. And you know from your time in law enforcement, there's a lot of human responses that as an officer you'd rather not have to deal with, you'd rather not hear, but you let it roll off your back and you carry on because you understand they're humans, right?
Yeah.
They're not robots.
Unless in this case, your brain is even smaller than your genitalia, which is probably unfindable. This is the sort of thing, by the way, the department, the jailers say she killed herself. the district attorney and the FBI are both looking into it as a homicide, which it most likely is. The thing is, this cop that originally pulled her over and stopped her and arrested her and violated her, this guy,
his attitude is horrible.
Yeah, well, he has copious liability for her death. And the sheriff's deputy that was standing and letting this happen without stopping him also shares copious liability.
Now, the part for me, the moment this thing goes bad, for me, that exact moment in time when you can define that this thing went from a routine traffic stop to the precipitating cause of her death, was after she says, yes, I'm upset. I'm upset because I was being courteous and getting out of your way, and now you're writing me a ticket. She's sitting in her own car, not under arrest, not in physical proximity to the officer. The door is in the way, okay? Now, you, like me, have probably told suspects who are being detained, absent any sort of a barrier, put your cigarette out, okay? Because I didn't want to take a cigarette to the eye, okay? I've told suspects, put your cigarette out, drop your cigarette. Not when they're sitting in their own car, it's a traffic violation, right?
Sure.
He tells her, put your cigarette out. She's sitting in her own car, and he says, put your cigarette out. She says to him, why, is there some law that sitting in my own car I have to put my cigarette out? Step out of the car. That was the moment this whole thing went bad. Just like you with McGill, she failed his attitude test, which has no part in the law.
Well, I would
Fortunately, you're still alive, but she died because she failed his attitude test.
I would back up two different things. One, I believe where this whole thing went bad was when this jackass was hired. The hiring process for police is generally flawed, generally majorly flawed. They're hiring the wrong kind of people to be cops in most cases. The other thing is that you actually use the term routine traffic stop, and a lot of people say there's nothing routine about a traffic stop.
Oh yeah, that's a
and you're full of crap.
That's that cop mantra.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that you're full of crap. And when people say that, by the way, we forgot to start the timer, so if you could let us know when we're counting down, that'd be great. That's what this was leading up in this segment. We forgot to push the timer.
We're
button.
even more unprepared than normal.
Yes, yes. So when you
that's
end
that's a great out for us all the time, isn't it?
It is.
We're
yeah.
unprepared. Okay,
Save us, we're unprepared. So anyhow, when cops or anybody will say there's no such thing as something routine about a traffic stop, if you have the same dash cam video from the same 10 cops and all 10 cops do 50 traffic stops, you're going to see a lot of routine. And then when other people say things like, cops are out there, putting their lives on the line every day, lie. That is I shouldn't say lie, that is not the case. Rarely.
Gross exaggeration.
Absolutely, yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Rarely do cops ever put their life on the line during their entire career in any individual given situation.
Right.
And a lot of them don't do that. They could, and they could be better cops, but they become what we call liability cops.
Yes.
Cops that won't do anything if they have any personal liability about anything at all.
Yeah. And, when we talk about this, putting your life on the line, one of the things that I find disturbing and to some extent offensive is when cops play this card all the time where they say, every day I go in and I put my life on the line for you. Okay? That may be true that may actually be a heartfelt sentiment on maybe, 1%?
No, far less than that.
Normally, the reason that they're out in that patrol car is, there are places where this is not true, but especially in the big metropolitan centers, they want that $60,000 or $70,000 a year. They want the retirement. They want the pristine medical coverage. They want the stability of a paycheck for the family. Serving the community and putting their life on the line for you is not even a part of their paradigm.
I think you missed the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that is they like the power. You and I both worked with a lot of cops.
Yes.
They might not have gotten into it because of that, but they damn sure stayed there because of that.
Right. But I guess my point is this, let's take somebody who's been on the job for 18 months. They may have not developed into the power-hungry monster yet, okay? But they've got a wife and a kid at home, okay? The reason they went for that job is they got tired. and I don't mean to be offensive, but they got tired of working at the auto parts store, or they got tired of working at the grocery store. The law enforcement career obviously pays more. It's more stable. You've got the medical insurance. Your family has a sense of stability and being taken good care of. There's that sense of community that we've talked about. Those are the reasons that young man went out to become a cop. He didn't go out to become a cop to save you or you or you or you or me, to put his life on the line for any. That was not even part of the paradigm. It didn't even exist in his mind when he went and filled out the paperwork. But once they're on the job and they have the badge, then when you say something, this cop is bad or that cop is bad, then it's, we put our lives on the line every day for you. It's asinine, because that's got nothing to do with why they took the job.
If anybody's asked in one of these pre-employment interviews to become a cop, why do you want to be a police officer? You know what the actual answer that they're looking for is? The actual answer they're looking for is along the lines of, well, I want to be a cop because I want to do what I'm told to do, and I will lie and do what I have to protect our little cop blue world within this department, as long as we're doing what we're told to do. I will perjure myself and lie and deceive and everything I need to protect this department.
Now, I don't know what your motivation was, but when I worked the street, I never once ever said to anybody, ever, about putting my life on the line for you. That's an asinine statement. My personal motive every night when I went to work, was, and this is probably why I had to leave, because I don't think my motives jibed with the motives of my community, okay? My motive was that when I went home at the end of my 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 hours, the community that I was working in was somehow, even if only to an infinitesimally small degree, better off than when I came on shift. That was my motivation, to make the world a better place for the people in the community I served. And I kept that to myself. I didn't tell other people that either. I mean, it wasn't like I went around saying, I'm out here trying to make It was a personal ethos. I didn't tell other people that. So I don't get this whole braggadocious BS thing they do. I think it's offensive and a con job.
What my whole motivation was, I got to work mostly outside, and every single day would never be repeated.
And we'll be back. We are back, and now it's time for... What is up with people claiming that this and such is so when experience and time tells us it is not? Today, as I'm recording this show, is the 4-year anniversary of the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the military. So, for 4 years in the military now, somebody who's a homosexual has been able to look at a coworker and say, hey, dude, I'm gay. I bring this up for a couple of reasons. Now, first of all, I think oftentimes people wonder why somebody who's heterosexual feels that gays being treated correctly is so important, and I'm going to get to that. But first I want to go back and lay the foundation of the whole Don't Ask, Don't Tell thing. For the entire history of the military up until Don't Ask, Don't Tell was put in place, if the United States military felt that one of its service members, they had a reasonably strong belief that a person was homosexual, they were simply drummed out of the military, period. That stopped with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. In other words, if somebody didn't say, I'm gay, the command structure could not say, hey, dude, are you gay? And so they were allowed to stay in the military if they were circumspect about their sexuality, which I kind of find absurd to ask anybody to, they're with a bunch of people who are openly talking about their sexual exploits. I've been in the military, I know how this goes. They're openly talking about their sexual exploits, but this guy or this gal can't say it. It's absurd. So then they were going to remove Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the same people who screamed bloody murder, don't put don't ask, don't tell in place, just throw those fags out of the military. The same people who said that then said, you can't stop don't ask, don't tell. Because if you let damn fags say that they're gay, then all the senior NCOs and all the officers are going to flee the military, and the United States is going to be open for invasion by whoever, because it doesn't really matter. I just hate gay people. That was the mindset leading up to the United States government doing away with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, leading up to Don't Ask, Don't Tell on the erstwhile Dave Champion show, I consistently said there will be zero difference in the functioning of the United States military. Of course, the people who opposed the removal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell opposed it on the basis that the United States military was going to fall apart if a lesbian was able to look at another gal and go, hey, I'm gay. Okay, so, which anybody with a brain knew that wasn't going to happen, but yet a sizable percentage of our population were saying that because they're bigots. And so it's been 4 years now. So what's the outcome? Who was right? Well, it's been 4 years, and the impact on the military has been essentially zero. Now, that's not to say the culture of the military has not been in some small way impacted. I'm sure it has. However, since gays are 3% of the population at large, and probably in the military, I'm guessing less than 1%, it's not a place gays flock to, you would imagine the cultural impact would be very, very, very negligible. As far as military effectiveness, it has been, in fact, zero. Okay? So the people who were claiming that the United States was going to be vulnerable to all of its adversaries if we allowed gay people to go, hey, dude, I'm gay, they've been proven absolute liars. So why would I, as a heterosexual, people perceive that I'm standing up for gays, which has nothing to do with it. I'm standing up for what is right and just. Let's go back to the end of the Civil War to show that this mentality has always been there, and it's always been unjust, and it has always been damaging to the fabric of our nation. After the Civil War, when blacks then were free, no longer slaves, in the southern states, the southern legislatures created something that today we look back on and call the Black Codes. This is where whites said, well, you may be free, but now we're going to legislate you into virtual slavery again. And if you asked a white person then why they wanted to do that to people who were now free, they told you, to protect the fabric of our country. So trying to return people to slavery by some other means is protecting the fabric of America. Well, and then we had, well after the Civil War, there were still laws in place that said that two black people could not marry without permission from a white guy. Okay? And if you ask them why, it's to protect American way of life. And then, of course, we had the case where people who were black and white could not marry. Okay? And if you ask people why they voted for that law, to protect the American way of life. Of course, the Supreme Court finally struck that down in 1967, not back in the 1800s, okay? This is how backwards ass parts of our country have been. Now we move forward, and it's the same mentality with homosexuals. Now, this is all, of course, on the heels of Obergefell v. Hodges, which was decided a couple weeks back by the United States Supreme Court, saying that gay marriage cannot be banned by the individual states. And, of course, we all know the rhetoric that preceded that decision by these same sorts of bigots, that it's going to destroy. Here's what they said. I kid you not. Some of this you go like, all right, and then some of it you're like, what? Okay. Destroy the family. Okay. If you want to say that, okay, there's no basis in fact. It's absolutely absurd. People who say that are idiots. But at least you can understand their bigoted framework for saying that. It's going to destroy our nation. Okay. Now we've gone from just, okay, your little bigoted framework to you've lost your mind. And the third claim was it's going to destroy civilization. All right, so why do I say this is important? Because if you go back and you read the writings of the Founding Fathers, virtually every single one of them said that for liberty to persevere and grow and flourish in America, we need to have knowledge. We need to have a dissemination of information. And of course, implicit in that for the welfare of liberty is accurate information. So when these sphincters create these false paradigms and tell you, you better not do this, it's gonna ruin America, and they're lying through their fucking teeth, it does not serve liberty. And that's why it is important to create a dialogue about it and to always point out that the people who say these things are absolute liars, scumbags, and in my opinion, they're anti-American. Bill, what do you have to say about that?
There was a movie, largest blockbuster of 1977. You might remember it, Star Wars. Right? You might wonder where I'm going.
I seem to recall.
You might wonder where I'm going.
I don't think I was born yet.
There's a scene in there where the Death Star blows up the planet Alderaan, right?
Okay.
And I bet you, between now and this time next year, you're going to get one of these bigots that says, well, you know the reason they chose Alderaan, they had gay marriage,
yeah,
right?
Probably.
That's why they got blown up. They had gay marriage
and
the planet Alderaan. You're right. It's funny how we always go to this deeper-throated Southern voice when we talk about people, which I don't know. I guess.
Well, the most recent issue, certainly, the people down south have been the leading
Bible Belt opponent. Yeah, I get it. Bible Belt, Oklahoma, over to Georgia and such. You can't fix stupid.
There is that.
You can teach ignorance away, but you can't fix stupid. Occasionally, what is actually ignorance comes across as stupid, and then time shows people, actually, it wasn't as bad. It wasn't hellfire and damnation in your Bible Belt. It wasn't all of that. And I love how there's one verse in one chapter of the Bible that says a man shall not lie with another. That is the one thing of all of the things in the Bible that contradict each other. For every verse and phrase that you can find two or three others that contradict it. It's interesting to me that one is held on to so strongly.
Well, Leviticus and Deuteronomy, of course, are filled with the Hebraic law, right? This is the law that was supposed to apply to the Jews. So how people suddenly imagine it applies to everybody else, but not only that.
So wait, we can't have gay Jews marrying now? I don't know.
Talk to the people in the temple about that. But my thing is, if you read these laws in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, not only do American Christians not obey virtually any of them, they don't even want any. If you said, look, if you're a true Christian, let's apply all the laws of Deuteronomy and Leviticus to you, people would at that point say, I'm not going to be a Christian anymore then. If that's the requirement to be a Christian, I'm out.
It's not for me to follow, it's for you to follow.
Yeah, but yet they pull out that one out of, I think there's 200 and something laws between Leviticus and Deuteronomy. They pull out that one. Now the other ones, if you imposed all of those on them, they'd quit Christianity. But they pull out that one and say, you, evil, bad. The mindset, now my thing is, you're right, you can't fix stupid. And I can't and you can't stop a bigot from being a bigot. Perhaps in time they can choose another path for themselves. We can't stop them. Okay? I recognize that. But part of my goal in holding up the mirror and turning the spotlight on the bigots is, admittedly, now we live in a country where we have free speech, but that doesn't mean that when you open your mouth that you should be respected. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. If you're going to say something really heinous, and people treat you with disrespect and don't want to know you anymore, okay?
That's part of having free speech.
There you go.
That'll happen.
So to me, part of holding up the mirror and turning on the spotlight on these bigots, it's not just that their bigotry is ugly and disgusting to begin with, but I want it to get to the point where they say, we talked about this before on the show, the word nigger, right? Back in 1964, when the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, it was not uncommon to have somebody sitting at the dinner table, well, yeah, I had to tell that nigger where to back off. Today, if somebody said that, people would go, leave my house, get out of here. I don't want that, okay? So today it is unacceptable. I want this sort of bigotry to stop, and I want it to be unacceptable concerning gays, because it's no more true of gays than it was true of blacks back then. Oh, you're just going to ruin the fabric of America. And if we can't change them, at least perhaps we can hold the spotlight on them so fiercely that they understand there's a consequence to doing things that are destructive to liberty, which is lie through their teeth about other humans and create a false paradigm to try and corruptly influence others.
Which is the true downfall of all of this. It seems though not everybody, but the majority of people who are anti-gay marriage are Christian. They talk about liberty as long as it's liberty for them, but not people who don't believe the same.
There is that element. And we'll be back.
Welcome back. Grab your pen, grab your paper, and pay attention. You know what really grinds my gears? People who just don't get it. Specifically today, we're talking about the homicide, the killing of 5 service people at a couple of recruiting depots in Tennessee last week. Now, what we have is we have a lot of these government analysts and anti-gun analysts. They're trying to look and see how could this have been prevented. It can't. You can't prevent that. Now, I know there's probably going to be, oh yeah, if we just got rid of guns. No, you don't seem to get that. You don't seem to get that criminals don't care what the law is. Criminals like having gun control laws on the books. Why do you think Chicago was the murder capital of the world for in and out every other year or so for decades? Because nobody could lawfully protect themselves with a gun. That's why. Now, the suspect in these killings bought the guns legally, passed the background checks. There was no mental holds, nothing like that. This was a guy, for what we can tell now, it's only a week in, may have been a religious zealot that just decided he wanted to go after the U.S. military for his beef with the way the federal government runs. We don't really know right now. That's just the working suspicion. And of course, the government's giving us that. Who can believe that? The thing is when something like this begins, it's not a question of how to prevent it, because human nature will never be able to prevent it. We cannot, nor will we ever achieve a completely sterile society, because the human race is involved. The human race will not allow for a sterile society. Just won't. And we have thousands upon thousands of years of history to show this, regardless of what's going on. E2 Brute, yeah, he was one of the close confidants of Caesar, wasn't he? And who took him down? Well, Caesar wasn't exactly doing what he was supposed to do. So when the Caesar that you subscribe to doesn't do something the way that you think he should for some time now, you might be the Brutus and go out and do something about it. Seems to be the case in Tennessee this last week. So the answer is, when something like this begins, how fast can we stop it? There was hundreds of people around that day. How many of them were packing guns? Not only just packing a gun. Owning a gun doesn't make you a qualified shooter any more than owning a piano makes you a musician. If you buy a piano, you want to be a musician, you got to study and practice. And then you've got to keep up with it. Same thing with a gun. You can't just buy it and all of a sudden you're protected. No. You've got to learn how to use it. You've got to practice with it and be diligent, and you've got to keep up with it. So when a shooting like this begins and you just happen to be there and you're surprised, my God, there's gunfire, there's something going on, there's no cops around, what is this? Well, pull out your gun and put an end to it. You know, there was a case years ago of a shooter in a mall in Tacoma, Washington. And in there was a man who had a CCW carrying his handgun, pulled it out, said to the kid who was shooting with some sort of a rifle, I think it was an SKS or an AK-47, something along that line, rather than shooting this young man who was just randomly killing people, he hollered over to him, "Son, you better put that gun down." What happened to this man who opened his mouth rather than exercising his trigger finger? He got shot 3 or 4 times. He survived, but he got shot. And the shooter went right along shooting even more people. There's a time for doing this, and there's a time for doing this. And when there's an active shooter in your presence, the time is to sort it out as quickly as you can, good guy versus bad guy. When you figure out who the bad guy is, it's time to do this. The only way these things are going to be stopped is when people are ready and prepared for this. I've been asked many times, why do you carry a gun? What are you so afraid of? Well, I'm not. I'm carrying a gun, and I have literally thousands upon even more thousands of hours with my guns. Far more than that of the average cop or anybody that's ever been in the military. People like to say, well, you know, police and military are trained to such a high standard. That is a joke. If you haven't gone through basic military or police training, you have no idea what this alleged high standard is. It's the industry standard, and it's incredibly low. It's holding up the basement. I know a guy who retired from the U.S. Navy. You know how many rounds he fired his entire career? 6. 6 rounds fired in a 20-year military career. All of those in basic training. Now, that is one far end of the spectrum. But when we talk about arming our troops to actually be able to defend themselves, you have to realize that you're not supposed to have a standing army of armed people here in the States. Now, if they're on their own base, absolutely. I get it. You should be armed on the base. You know who stopped that? Bill Clinton. Same guy whose wife decided that she didn't like the look of the dress blue Class A uniform Marines that guard and protect the White House wearing their uniforms. Because of her, they had to take those uniforms off and wear suits. Try telling that to a decorated Marine. You can't wear your uniform on duty while guarding the nation's White House. You've got to wear a suit because Mrs. Claus over here doesn't like it. Dave, how do we prevent these sorts of mass shootings?
You know, this is a message that seems to be impossible to get across to the American public. You and I have both been at it for decades. And the message is nobody else on the entire planet is responsible for our personal safety but us. Now, I know people who carry a gun every single day and who train and who reject the paradigm that they will ever get involved to save anybody else, okay? Their paradigm is this is for me and my family. I'm not gonna place myself at risk for anybody else. That's their job, okay? I get that, but there's some hypocrisy here, and let me explain. The guy who's saying that, if his 10-year-old daughter was in the mall when an active shooter went off, he would get down on his knees and beg the guy with the gun, the good citizen with the gun, to please save his daughter. But yet, he says, I won't get involved to save anybody else. It's just for me and mine, okay? When we have violent felons out there, to me, it's not my problem or your problem or the guy who he's shooting at problem. It's all of our problems. Violent felons are a problem for everyone. And the way you stop violent felons, I'm going to be really blunt, is to kill them in the midst of their violent felony. Recidivism. Are they ever going to commit another violent felony if they're killed in the commission of their first one? Nope. Okay. This thing about, you told the story about the guy in Oregon. You know, son, you better put down that gun.
Right? Tacoma, yeah.
Okay. So many Americans are under the false impression, usually based on TV, they get programmed by TV.
Oh, yeah.
That when you come out and you're ready to go, you have to say, drop the gun, stop what you're doing, you have to give some verbal command, which has nothing to do with the law, it's television, okay? If I'm standing in a Quick Mart and I'm back getting a water in the back and some guy comes in with a shotgun, racks the shotgun and puts it to the clerk's head and starts screaming at the clerk, I am under no obligation, as I come around the corner, I am under no obligation to say, drop that shotgun. If he's got the shotgun to the clerk's head, he's never going to know I'm there. Okay? I'm going to press the trigger and I'm going to check my surroundings and it's over. It's done. Because if I say anything, he might shoot the clerk, he might shoot me, and more importantly, he's already a deadly threat to another human being.
And let's this is totally unprepared. Let's show, for training's sake here, where would you engage this person? Where would you place your shots in that situation?
Back of the head.
Absolutely. Why? Because that's the electrical box. This is hydraulic. And shooting somebody in the chest, even with the slightest amount of adrenaline or no adrenaline at all,
right?
This and this are all connected here.
Right.
Okay? If you have to shut it off up here to keep this from working anymore. So if you come up, somebody's got a shotgun to somebody else's face and you shoot them in the chest, just a clinching reaction is going to probably kill them. You got to hit them in the head. And this is one of those things you learn when you train.
You know, and one of the other things is we see this again, people are trained by Hollywood and they're trained by watching cops who do this all the time, which is horrible, and this is why they have to shoot so many people, is they're out in the open. Okay, I just saw them, you might have seen the video in California of them shooting those kids on the bicycles.
Yeah.
Okay. Standing out in the middle of the street, screaming commands. The kid did one motion the cop didn't like, they lit up the kid and killed him. Okay. Kid was like, what, 12, something like that? Okay. Because the cop had no cover. Okay. When I give this quick mart example, and I see the guy with the shotgun, I am not going to expose myself any more than is absolutely required for me to get my sights up and press. Okay? Why? I don't know if his Confederates are in the store. The guy standing there acting like he's a victim could be the shooter's Confederate.
You never know.
I'm not going to step out into the open like Rambo, oh, let me shoot you in the back of the head,
You better put that shotgun down, son, and not splatter blood all over the back of the wall.
The movie version would be, walk up quietly behind him and press the trigger, okay, out in the open. Huh? I don't, they talk about bravery, okay? What's brave? I don't know. But I do know.
It's oftentimes, when you look at it, when people cite it, it's stupidity at the moment that happens to work out well in the end.
My thing is effectiveness. Violent felon gone, Dave Champion non-perforated. If that's how it winds up, I did my job. I don't know what this whole bravery thing is about. There may be moments for that.
Some people need to get shot at specific moments in time.
Oh, all right.
And some of us need to be in the area at the time to shoot them. And if one of us were in Tennessee last week, there'd be some service members that are still alive. And by the way,
in Tennessee, down south.
Absolutely horrible and despicable that Barack Obama didn't have the flags lowered to half-mast until after 5 days and a tremendous amount of backlash around the country.
Now, the other thing that gets me, Tennessee, right? Part of the southern states. There are very few people that support the right to keep and bear arms more than down south. Yes? Okay. Where the hell were their guns?
I tell you where they are, because I go to Tennessee once or twice a year.
All right.
Where they are is they're expecting everybody else to have them, so that means I don't have to have them because we believe they're everywhere.
I despise that mentality. And we'll be back right after these words.
And welcome back from the break. Now, we're going to get into our viewer mailbag. You can always email us. And please do, we encourage you to email us. Questions, comments, topics, whatever it is, daveandbillshow@gmail.com.
Even the nasty, insulting stuff is fun.
Yeah, I mean, we don't mind about that. And we have a delete button, too. It's all good. But we'll read it before we delete it if you want to talk a little smack.
It's always fun. We laugh about it.
We're thick-skinned. And then you can also always catch up on all of the episodes that we have at totallyunprepared.info. That shows links to our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, everything. We have the videos on there. You can have just an audio if you want to listen to it when you're driving down the car or working out, whatever it might be. So there you go. That's how you can check us out and get a hold of us. And Dave, we have some folks who are interested in basically the outpouring of all this hacking that's going on.
Oh, yeah.
All of the hacking. I mean, it started a couple years ago really getting into the news with going into large stores. Home Depot was hacked and several others. Now you've got a lot of cards now that have the little chip in them now.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen that, but that's been big in Europe. As a matter of fact, a lot of non-chip cards for the last couple of years, if you're visiting Europe, they won't allow you to buy anything because they don't even have a magnetic stripe anymore. Now, it's going to lead to no magnetic stripe in the States at some point in time, but now the cards that you're getting, which will all be introduced by the end of this year, I believe, and replaced, have a magnetic stripe and that little chip, which that little chip will inevitably be the only thing left. But that helps prevent unauthorized things and hacking and all that other good stuff. So there's nothing for you to get. But
in the end, you'll make a purchase from your Star Trek communicator.
You probably will, or just retinal scan, who knows. But let's talk about the Jeep.
This is a fun story. Some hackers went to a reporter and said, hey, we can take control of various cars that have this particular type of computer in it. The Jeep product line happens to be one of those. And so here they are sitting on their couch a couple states away. And the reporter that they talked with is driving a Jeep. This is a contrived situation. Only contrived insofar as that the driver knew what was about to happen or knew that the car was going to get hacked. He didn't know exactly what that was going to look like or feel like. So he's driving down the road. These hackers bust into, sitting on a couch, they bust into the Jeep's computer. Now, it's interesting because there's some consequence to that. The radio started blaring, the windshield wipers started going. So if you knew that this was on this particular type of computer system, this is a reaction to having being busted into, you would know like to bail out of the car right away. But this was like a first time thing, right? And it was contrived. They wanted to see what was going to happen. So the windshield wipers go on, the stereo starts blasting. But more importantly then, the hackers disable his brakes.
From the computer.
From the computer.
No longer dealing with a master cylinder here now. We're dealing with a master computer.
The computer has said, do not apply any pressure on the discs.
Wow.
So he's driving down the road. He's pumping the brakes. Zero response. Okay. And then they turn the steering wheel.
With the computer.
The hackers turn the steering wheel, and he goes off into a ditch.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously, this is some pretty scary stuff. And now this was
good thing Jeeps are generally four-wheel drive.
Yeah, but get this now. Here's how the Jeep and other companies are handling this who have that computer system. This is a good piece of consumer news. You can go to their website and download a fix for that, but you have to download it to a flash drive, and you have to go plug it into your car and upload it into the computer system. And if you're not up to that, you have to take it to the dealership and they'll do it for you. But there is a fix to stop this one. But this is just the iteration for today, July of 2015. Down the road, they'll find other ways to get in. A couple months ago...
That's why you got to drive an old, cool, classic American muscle hot rod or something.
Well, a couple months ago, a guy did the exact same thing while sitting in an aircraft. He was sitting in the passenger compartment. He got into the wiring. This, again, he intended to. This was to prove a point. He had communicated with, I think it was the FAA, that this could be done, and they ignored him. So he got on a plane, he got into the wiring thing, he hooked up some connections, and he caused the plane to drop 500 feet on his command.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, he's being prosecuted federally now.
Imagine.
Which I think is absurd. If he went to the government and said, hey, this is at risk, and the government basically said, pound sand, we don't care, I think what he did was righteous. Okay.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he could have gone another way about it. Look, let's set up a test scenario, and I'll show you.
They didn't want to.
Really?
That's what his thing was. He goes, let me show you how I can do this. We don't care. So then he went and he did it in real life. Now they're prosecuting him. But it points out how easily, that we talk about terrorism all the time. Somebody who's knowledgeable could have taken over the plane sitting there, Then we had this.
This is real terrorism, what we're about to talk about now, I think. This is true terrorism for millions of people in America.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, there's two things I want to talk about. One is the White House Office of Management and Budget, but we'll talk about that next. But the one you're talking about is Ashley Madison.
Yeah, the cheater website, right?
Yes. This is the one where I think their slogan is "Life is short, have an affair."
Yeah.
Right. Married people go on this. It's like a dating website for married people. And now my understanding is there are single people on there too, but it was created for this purpose for married people to cheat.
Somebody
by the way,
hacked in and got all the
here's an
info.
interesting fact, though. Ashley Madison has long provided a certain amount of data to the public. I think it's part of their investment strategy to get people to invest in the company and so forth. And one of the pieces of information they routinely publish is where most of their users come from geographically. Now, this is fun. I think they published the top 20 or 25. Number 4, Salt Lake City.
Oh, wow. Mormon capital of the world, right?
Well, I think this is what you get when people feel they have to live the way their community demands they live from a sociological point of view, rather than living the way they want to live. Then when there's an avenue to get, Anyway, so they call these people now hacktivists. They have an agenda, right? And they hack. And so the agenda of this group, perhaps a fundamentalist Christian group, is that they are demanding that there's 37 million subscribers supposedly on 37 million. Now that's a little over 1/10 of the U.S. population, and they're demanding that Ashley Madison take the entire website down, or they will start outing the rich, affluent, and notable subscribers to Ashley Madison, who are married, of course. Yeah. I don't know if they have enough data to put that all together and do that effectively, but that's the threat.
Wow.
Now, the other one, White House Office of Management and Budget, for whatever reason, they maintain the files on people who have undergone background checks for national security ratings. Okay? They go, everybody thinks, secret. Oh, you have a secret clearance. Most people don't understand that's the bottom of the barrel, and they've got like 27 gradients above that. That computer system that maintains all the information from these background checks was hacked. Okay. Now, we've talked about this here on the show. The government always says it's China. That's the default.
Sure,
the go-to thing. Something got hacked. China.
Chinese hackers.
Yeah,
which it was just maybe some Chinese guys in Baltimore.
That or Korea with their old video game terminal.
Yeah. They're hacking from their Atari.
That's right. But here's the thing about this. For instance, one of the cases that was illustrated, that was brought up after the hacking of all that secret background information, is that one guy, for instance, he was a married man and he'd had an affair. This sort of goes with the Ashley Madison story. He'd had an affair. When you're going for a federal background check for a security clearance, they're not judgmental. For instance, they don't care if you had an affair. They care if you lie and don't tell them about the affair, okay? Because that to them tells them you are unreliable as far as being truthful with the government. So this guy told the background investigators that he had an affair. It's like, I want it all on the table, unless this comes out. Nobody can blackmail me if it's on the table.
Right.
Okay? You guys know. That information is now with the hackers, whoever they are.
Okay, so I'm a member of Ashley Madison.
Well, obviously some of the concerns are that whoever has that data, it's meant in some regards, to some limited extent, to make sure that people who have secret and top secret and the other 25 above that, to make sure that they cannot be blackmailed. But the presumption is nobody else has the data but the government.
Because they go through your background and your life and associates and places you worked and everybody that's close to you for the most part.
Yes.
If you get high enough up and somebody has everything dealing with who is important to you. There's another thing that the Obama administration came out with earlier this week I'd like to talk about. They want to ban certain people who are collecting Social Security from being able to own guns. And there's some caveats.
I think that's a BS story.
Okay.
And let me tell you why I think that. I've read the several articles. They all seem to come from one article.
Okay.
And when I got to the article that appears to be the core original story, it says Obama's going to do this, and all of the details are unknown.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
How can you? It's like, I know you're planning to do a bank robbery, and all of the details of your bank robbery I don't know them, but I know you're going to do a bank robbery.
It's just one of these things where the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Now, we talk about the Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. There's about 24 rights that are spelled out in the Bill of Rights. And of course, not all of our rights are enumerated in the Constitution.
Absolutely.
There
Ninth
are
Amendment.
countless others.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court has named many of them over the centuries. But what we end up with is one right that says at the very end, shall not be infringed. And that little guy right there seems to be ignored all the time. Seems of all the rights that are infringed upon more than any other, tends to be
the one that
says shall not be infringed.
By the way, let me be clear. I'm not defending Obama on this. Do I think that Obama or his people would do something like that? Perhaps they might.
They might well be manifesting something along this line.
Perhaps they might think to do something like that. The question is, are they really doing it? You can make up all sorts of fantasy stories. The question is, are they really doing it? And it appears to me that it is a story, it's a gossip story without any evidence to support it. So are they doing it? Unless somebody's going to provide some evidence, it's not even journalism, it's gossip.
We've got 18 months left of a lame duck president with both houses of Congress against him.
A lame president.
Lame, yeah. 18 months left.
And then we get a new lame president.
We'll see what happens in these next 18 months. A lot of havoc can be wreaked through attempt at executive decision on a lot of this garbage.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't put anything past certain people, but to me, it's like, for journalism, it's got to actually have some facts in it. Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Take care.